Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for stumbling into this meeting tonight. I'm usually a little better than that. Welcome to the Town of Nottingham Zoning Board of Adjustment May meeting. There's the full board present tonight. And I'm going to ask each board member to raise their hand as I call their name so that the participants can see who's on the board and who isn't. It's kind of difficult in this Zoom format to know which of the pictures up there are board members. So Terry, would you raise your hand? I can see you. Peter White. Raylene Shippey Rice, I can't see you, but I saw you a while ago. Raylene and Teresa, are you on the phone or are you on video? Can you hear me, Joanna?
I'm here.
Thank you, Teresa. So is that, and myself, I'm Bonnie Winona McKinnon. I am the chairman of the zoning board at this point in time. We have looks like three hearing cases tonight. First case is case 21-006-VA, an application from the estate of John F. Bateman by Gail Bateman, administrator, and Alan and Marcia Putnam, represented by T.F. Moran Incorporated, Seacoast Division. Requesting a variance from Article 2, Section C, 2B of the Nottingham Zoning Ordinance to permit 175 feet of road frontage as a result of a potential lot line adjustment necessary to resolve an existing encroachment. The property is located at 12 and 14A Barrington Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, and is identified as tax map 1, lots 2, 3, and 4. Who will be presenting this case to the board tonight? Let me first go over the basic rules. I will call on each applicant as your turn is up on the agenda to present the case for either yourself or your client. Members of the board may ask you questions during and after your presentation. And then I will allow members of the public to speak for and against. And the applicant will have the last time slot to rebut anything that people said that or bring, further clarifying information to the board. So we work on the information presented to us at this hearing and other information that comes to us about the hearing. We might receive letters from people, and there may be members of the public present who wish to speak. So anyone's allowed to speak. I ask that everyone remains civil, polite, and that we'll get through this as quickly as we can. Who's presenting this case number 1 for the estate of John Bateman?
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Marinus Vanderpaul III. I'm with T.F. Moran Inc.
Thank you. Tell me your first name again, please.
Marinus?
Marinus.
Yes, please. Please call me Mo if you like.
Okay, thanks, Mo. I'm writing that down so I don't forget.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and members of the public. I am Marinus Vanderpaul with T.F. Moran, Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors. Assisting me tonight was scheduled to be Attorney Paul Podlosky of counsel to the law firm of Simmons and Ortlieb of Hampton, New Hampshire, attorneys for the estate of John F. Bateman Jr., which owns the properties at 10 and 12 Barrington Road. On behalf of our client, Gail Bateman, administrator of the estate, and on behalf of Alan and Marcia Putnam, owners of the property at 14A Barrington Road, we are here with an application for variance from Article 2, Section C, 2B of the zoning ordinance to effect a reduction in frontage of the Putnam property from 200 feet to 175 feet. These abutting properties are located in the northeasterly section of town on the north side of Barrington Road, also known as routes 9 and 202. Across the road from North River Pond, the properties fall within the residential agricultural zoning district. The purpose of the requested relief is to enable a lot line adjustment between the properties of the estate of John F. Bateman Jr. and that of Alan and Marcia Putnam. The lot line adjustment would resolve a current encroachment of the house shown as number 12 Barrington Road and related improvements as shown on the zoning relief plan, pardon me. The proposed lot line adjustment would also bring house at number 12 Barrington Road into compliance with the required side yard setback of 20 feet. The setback of the Putnam's dwelling in relation to the adjusted lot line is unaffected by the proposed line adjustment and remains in compliance with the ordinance. The abutting Bateman and Putnam lots are both pre-existing non-conforming lots of record. The proposed lot line adjustment also includes the swap of 2,111 square feet of land from each lot to the other to maintain the original amount of square footage upon each lot. That is, the proposed lot line adjustment will not result in either lot losing its original amount of square footage. In summary, we are requesting relief from the frontage requirement of the zoning ordinance in an attempt to correct an encroachment issue via a lot line adjustment between the two properties. Until the encroachment problem is resolved, both lots are unmarketable. The Bateman property is currently listed for sale to pay back taxes to the town, but no closing can occur until the encroachment problem is resolved by a lot line adjustment. We respectfully ask for the board's approval of the requested variance. We appreciate your time and attention this evening. Attorney Podolsky and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Madam Chair, I don't see Attorney Podolsky present, but I do see Attorney Michael Ortlieb present. I'm not sure if he's here to fill in for Attorney Podolsky.
Can we ask him? Sir? You need to unmute yourself.
Yes, I understand. No, I'm just here to observe. Attorney Podolsky is on the call. I can see him and he's waving at everyone, so I'm going to let him
He
speak.
is here. He's the guy going like this.
Okay, not showing up on my screen, but that's okay.
Well, you can only see.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my sign says Lynn, which is my wife's name on this account. That's all. I work from my home office. I was going to say that I am of counsel with Simmons and Ortlieb of Hampton, and we represent the estate of John Bateman Jr. The Bateman properties are being sold, as Mo told you, to pay back taxes. Both of these are pre-existing non-conforming lots. The house, the Bateman house at number 12 Barrington Road was built in 1940. There were several transfers of the Putnam property, both conveyances to new owners over the years and mortgaging of the Putnam property, and this encroachment was not known to exist. It only became known to exist last fall when we had a survey done in connection with preparing the Bateman properties to be sold. And once the survey revealed the encroachment, that is a slight portion, the southeast corner of the Bateman house at number 12 Barrington, plus a deck that comes off that house, those are actually encroaching on the Putnam boundary. And to resolve the encroachment, we are proposing a boundary line adjustment. And as Mo said, it has these features. First of all, there will be no difference in terms of what these lots look like. There's not going to be any new structures built with this additional 20-foot sideline that's accomplished through the lot line adjustment. The lot line adjustment does achieve a 20-foot sideline in accordance with the zoning law that currently does not exist. And as Mo said, there will be a transfer or land swap of 2,111 square feet from Bateman to Putnam, and then toward the rear of the property from Putnam to Bateman, so that the remaining square footage on the respective lots is the same as it was before the lot line adjustment. The only difference is going to be that Putnam will lose 25 feet of road frontage because of the lot line adjustment, and that 25 feet of frontage will be added to the southeast corner of Putnam's lot at number 12 Barrington. I'm happy to address the criteria for a variance. I mean, I know the board has to consider all that. Would you like me to address those matters, Madam Chair?
Yes, sir, I would. Let me first pause and ask if any members of the board have any questions so far in the presentation. If you're all good, I'll have him go ahead with the 5 criteria. And I can only see Terry and Raylene, so if anybody else wishes to speak, you're going to have to somehow get my attention or Joanna's. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. First, the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because no structures would be moved. The proposed lot line produces no visual change in the appearance of the wooded area. It's a wooded area between the Bateman house at number 12 and the Putnam house at number 14. And with regards to road frontage, the ordinance requires a 200-foot road frontage. Most of the lots in this neighborhood do not have 200 feet of road frontage. Secondly, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. The proposed lot line, as I mentioned, produces no visual change in the appearance of this wooded area that's affected by this 25-foot frontage difference. There's a total of 400 feet of frontage between the Putnam property and the Bateman property. And that 400 feet is simply to be reallocated. Instead of 200 and 200, it's going to be 225 on the Bateman side, 175 on the Putnam side. And as I mentioned, it does achieve a 20-foot sideline setback that currently is not present. Substantial justice, the third criteria, substantial justice would be done because the lot line adjustment is necessary to resolve the encroachment problem, which renders both properties unmarketable, and at the same time achieves the 20-foot sideline setback to comply with the ordinance. Number 4, the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. As I mentioned, the proposed lot line adjustment will produce no visual change in these properties. Somebody driving by and looking at them, they're going to look exactly the way they do today. And as I mentioned, most of the neighboring lots in that neighborhood do not have 200 feet of frontage. Number 5, the literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. There is no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application of that provision to this property. I think that can be answered again by saying that there's going to be no visual change in these properties if the board allows this 25-foot frontage variance. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. Again, no visual change. The lot line merely reallocates the existing 400 feet of total frontage between the two lots. And the lot sizes of Putnam and Bateman, because of the land swap, remain the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, would anyone like to have probably Mo, since he's the engineer, put up the map on this, or does everybody understand what you see on the map that was in our packet that Joanna sent out? I mean, it's pretty obvious to me, but if you're not used to reading these, it might be a little confusing. How they made like a semicircle, sort of, to go around number 12. And it looks like there are two houses on the same lot. Is that correct, sir?
Yes. Yes, this is pre-existing, non-conforming.
Right.
One house was built in
Pre-zoning.
1930, one was built in 1940.
Yep. Way before we had zoning ordinances. So
Yes.
do any members of the board have any further questions of Either of these gentlemen?
No.
Anyone have any comments?
I'll just comment, excuse me, I don't see how this would change anything. It doesn't affect the public interest. It's just a lot line adjustment, basically, right?
Basically, it is, right? It swaps equal amounts of land between the two lots. It makes one lot have 175 feet instead of 200, which is the requirement now. So that's why they need the permission of the board to do this. I think the other reasons for granting the variance have been well answered. It really wouldn't affect the value of surrounding properties. It really is kind of a hardship because both properties, they're in separate ownerships, and neither can be sold until this problem is resolved. Okay, now I'm going to ask members of the public, does anyone wish to speak in support of this application? Can't see how many people, there's about 20 people here this evening. Okay, I'm hearing no one. Do we have the hand raising thing here, Joanna? No. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition? I hear none. And do either of you gentlemen representing the applicants, do either of you wish to say anything further?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Then I'm going to ask someone from the board to present a motion since no one has questions, comments.
Madam Chair,
Teresa,
I move that we accept the request on the application for case 21-006-VA for the estate of John F. Bateman by Gail Bateman as written.
I'll second that motion.
so a motion has been made and seconded to approve this request as presented as written. All those in favor, I'm going to roll call. I'm Bonnie Winona McKinnon. I vote aye. Raylene, could you be next, please? Actually, Peter, you'll be next. You're on.
Aye.
Raylene, sorry.
Aye.
Terry
Aye.
and Teresa, I presume aye, but could you say it?
Aye.
All right, it sounds like you have a unanimous decision. And your request has been granted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
There is a 30-day window during which anyone may appeal our decision.
Very good.
So you know. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Noted. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Good luck.
Okay. The next case. Case number 21-007-AA. Application from Tammy DeFrancesco, is that how you say that? Francesco and James George for an appeal to an administrative decision made by the Planning Board on April 7th, 2021, that a variance is required from Article 2, Section C of the zoning ordinance for a change of use. The property is located at 214 Raymond Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, and is identified as tax map 69, lots 8 and 10. Who will be presenting this case to the board?
I will, Madam Chair. Brett Allard with Bernstein Share Legal Counsel to Tammy DeFrancesco, James George, and the Kubota Trust, the landowners and applicants.
Okay, so the same rules will apply. You will be given a chance to present your case. Board members may interrupt you if they need to ask questions. They may ask questions when you're done, and then I will open it up to members of the public. I should, first of all, declare the public hearing closed. I forgot to do that. We're now opening a new public hearing for case 21-007-AA. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good evening again. Brett Allard with Bernstein Share, and I'm joined here in our virtual format by Scott Frankowitz of New Hampshire Land Consultants. He's our surveyor engineer who put the plans together for this project, and also Tammy DeFrancesco and James George, you can see on the screen as well. This application concerns 214 Raymond Road, tax parcel 69, lots 8 and 10. They immediately abut each other. And Last year, the applicants obtained a special event permit from the Board of Selectmen to hold a watercross event on their property. And if you're not familiar with watercross, think a snowmobile on jet skis that can go on the water. By all accounts, the event last year that they had obtained the special permit for to just hold on one weekend was a hit, by all accounts that I've heard. And then in the fall last year, the applicant talked with the town staff about doing 3 events this year, one in the spring, one in the summer, one in the fall, each occurring on one weekend. And they were told that they needed to file a site plan application with the planning board to obtain an approval for a change of use. The applicant did that and filed a site plan application with the planning board on January 20th, 2021. Attended several hearings with the planning board until the April 14th meeting, where the planning board made the administrative decision that it believed that a variance was required to allow the watercross events as a use before the planning board could continue to act on the site plan application. So we have appealed that decision to this board. We respectfully disagree, and we do not think that a variance is required in order for the planning board to act on the site plan application. So before I get into the argument, I'll just give a little bit of background. And I'm going to try to share my screen here if I can pull it off technologically. So here's our site plan that was submitted to the planning board. The applicants own lot 8 up here, and then this is lot 10 down here. Can everyone see my screen okay?
I can.
Great. So both lots are in the residential agricultural district. Lot 8 up here is approximately 25.11 acres. It's improved with a single family home right here. You can see where the applicants live. Down here, lot 10 is about 63.04 acres. So it's all of this area. And then it actually goes further this way off the screen, just over 63 acres of substantially vacant land. But it does maintain a pretty unique feature in that there's a gravel pit here with a man-made pond in it. And our understanding is that gravel pit is grandfathered. It's existed on this property since at least the early 70s, if not earlier. It's an active, ongoing gravel pit that the applicants use. And actually, we just learned recently that back in the 1970s, we think it was the town of Nottingham that was actually excavating out of this pit originally. They had some sort of agreement with the landowner where the town was actually pulling material out of this pit. But be that as it may, it now belongs to the applicants. There's a garage here, and then their access out to Raymond Road, Route 156, is through this easement that crosses over the abutting lot here back to the main road. So our original subdivision, our original submission to the planning board showed parking on both lots and camping on both lots up here and down here. So the parking is obviously for racers and the public. The camping is only proposed for participants of the event, the racers and their immediate families. So this isn't a situation where we have public spectators coming and staying overnight. That's the camping area here is just to facilitate the racers and their families for the weekend. Originally, we were proposing to sort of have this area spread across both lots. Since our original submission, both to the planning board and the zoning board, we have moved all of the parking and all of the proposed camping spots onto lot 10 to keep them on, what you could call, I guess, the more commercial of the two lots, in that it has an active ongoing gravel pit already. Other than that, the watercross events are proposed on 3 weekends a year. And because they're only proposed on 3 weekends a year, so 9 days a year, we believe it's an accessory use permitted by right. that's subordinate and incidental to the principal use of this lot 10, which is the active ongoing grandfathered commercial, if you will, gravel pit. So before I dive into the analysis on the administrative appeal, if the board has any questions sort of about the property in general for either me or Mr. Frankowitz, I'd be happy to answer them at this point.
I have a question. Looking at your map, Brett.
Yep.
May I call you Brett?
Yes.
Where you're showing the camping area and the parking area, is that on lot 10? Is this a revised? Is it, it's my understanding you moved it from where perhaps it was originally intended to be?
Yes, this is now all completely on lot 10. So if you want to follow my cursor, the lot line runs right about here.
Okay.
It's this double dashed line.
And it used to be above it, right? In the lot above it?
Prior, we had parking proposed in this area where my cursor is, and then some of the camping spaces crossed up into this area up here. But we've
Right,
now
that's when I went on a site walk that I was shown it was up there.
yeah, we've since then we've moved it all down to keep it all onto lot 10, as I said, is sort of the more commercial of the two lots, as it has the ongoing active gravel operation. So we thought it would make more sense to contain any non-residential activity completely on lot 10.
Does anyone else have questions?
Well, maybe he's about to answer this, but your premise is that going from a gravel pit to a campground is not a change of use? I don't understand.
I am about to get into the analysis, and I think I will answer that question as I go through, so I'd be happy to do that.
If I may,
Kevin,
Kevin Bassett here. Just
let me just introduce you first. Kevin Bassett is an alternate on this board, so he's not seated tonight, but he is a participating board member. He won't be voting. Go ahead, Kevin, sorry.
No, that's okay. So the question about the camping, if I understand it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the camping is temporary, and I believe there are no electrical facilities, no sewage facilities, no water facilities.
That's correct, and Tammy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the case, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions, I'd be happy to dive into the analysis, which I believe will answer, hopefully, Mr. White's question. So again, this is watercross use that we're proposing, only 3 weekends a year, and we think it's an accessory use that's permitted by right to the principal use of this lot 10, which is the active ongoing grandfathered legal gravel pit operation. So the Nottingham zoning ordinance doesn't expressly define what an accessory use is or describe specific permissible accessory uses in the residential agricultural district, but New Hampshire law provides that if a zoning ordinance is silent on those sort of things, the common law will provide opportunities for permitted accessory uses when the zoning ordinance is silent. And if you look at Peter Laughlin's New Hampshire practice series, which really has an excellent discussion of accessory uses and a summary of the applicable New Hampshire law on it. He states that an accessory use is one which is dependent on or pertaining to the permitted principal use. In other words, a subordinate use of the property occasioned by the main use in an incident of it, rather than a principal use in and of itself. And I'll continue quoting him: to be incident and subordinate, such that it's an accessory use, it must be a minor use in relation to the permitted use, and the accessory use must bear a reasonable relationship to the primary use. So Nottingham's zoning ordinance is of the permissive nature, meaning that in the absence of a variance or special exception, the ordinance generally functions to prohibit uses of land that aren't expressly permitted as primary uses. But the rule of accessory uses, as I just outlined, is in response to the impossibility of a zoning ordinance to possibly contemplate and provide for all the various accessory, subordinate, incidental uses that could accompany a permitted principal use. So as Mr. Laughlin has said, even under a permissive ordinance, a given use may be allowed even if it is not explicitly allowed. Those types of uses are said to be accessory to the use that is expressly permitted. And even if the ordinance doesn't expressly provide for them in a certain zone, if the board believes that they are subordinate and incidental to and minor to the principal use, then they're permitted by right without the need for a variance. And that's what we propose that we have here. We have a principal use, which is an ongoing active gravel pit that's existed on the 63-acre tract going back to at least the 1970s. It's a commercial type operation. It does have an inherent level of noise on a regular basis. And because we're only proposing to host watercross events on the man-made pond within the excavation zone 3 weekends per year, we believe the minor and very periodic use that we are proposing is extremely subordinate and incidental to the ongoing active day in and day out gravel pit use. And the applicants, again, are only proposing the watercross use on this lot 10 because they already operate the gravel pit there. So when you're looking on whether, the two uses, and in order to be an accessory use, the accessory use has to be dependent on the principal use. That's exactly what we have here. We have an accessory watercross event proposal that's dependent on the existing gravel pit use, the man-made pond within the gravel pit, because if that didn't exist on this property, the applicants wouldn't propose to host the events here. They'd go somewhere else. It's that principal use, the principal gravel pit pond use that gives rise to the ability to have this really very secondary 3 weekend a year watercross event. So for those reasons, we think it is an accessory use, and that's really the primary analysis, and we think it's on point. And the only last thing I wanted to touch on before I wrap up my presentation is that the Nottingham zoning ordinance doesn't, I know we're in the residential and agricultural district, but the Nottingham zoning ordinance doesn't unequivocally reject the concept of commercial uses in that zone. We have grandfathered commercial type uses like gravel pits. The Nottingham zoning ordinance provides for home occupations where it's expressly allowed, and those are commercial uses. On a smaller scale, people can host yard sales and have similar type businesses. This is not I understand that this is what we are proposing is not a yard sale, and it is certainly not a home occupation. The only reason I draw any comparison like that is to really get the point across that there are certain instances where the idea of a commercial use being permitted by right in the residential and agricultural district is not a completely foreign concept to the Nottingham zoning ordinance. So that is our position with regard to whether we think a variance is required. We do not think a variance is required because we believe it's a permitted accessory use to the existing legal principal use. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions about our presentation.
Kevin here, if I may. Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead, Kevin.
You made a statement earlier about the 3 events and the calendar dates in which they would be held. There is contention on those dates from abutters and such. You mentioned spring, summer, and fall. And just for record, would you be talking about a spring event sometime before June 21, normal spring, summer date sometime during the summer, and then a fall sometime after September 21, a normal fall, summer fall date? Just to sort of put a stake in the ground on your spring, summer, and fall comment.
Tammy, would you like to respond to that to give them a better idea on the timing of the events?
Yes, that's what our whole intention was from the very beginning. We want to have it as early as early as possible, only have one in the summer, and then have one almost late into fall, so that it doesn't run into anybody on the lake's enjoyment for the whole summer. We want to have one early, which we missed this year, and only one in the summer and one as late as possible.
Thank you.
And then the one other thing I would point out is that, as I mentioned, one event can be accomplished and was accomplished last year through a special permit with the Board of Selectmen. So if you count that one, we're really only asking for, I guess, 2 additional events than could otherwise be accomplished without any zoning approval, just to sort of keep things into perspective.
I have a question. I really don't see how a campground has a reasonable relationship to a gravel pit. I mean, it seems to me they'd be in great danger when the gravel pit was in operation, and it would certainly disturb their camping ability. So I don't think that's a reasonable relationship, a campground and a gravel pit. To me, they're like very contrary relationships. So I think you do need to have a change of use.
Can I say something?
Sure.
We're not trying to have a campground at all. What we're just trying to do is give the racers a place to sleep. Well, they have to get up early the next day and then just bring their self-contained camper. They're not actually like camping. It's not like a full blown out camping event. It's just a place to stay instead of them having to drive wherever they go back and to be here early the next morning. They're just actually just staying in their camper so they have a place to sleep instead of having to sleep in their car.
So,
It's not really a campground at all. We're not trying to establish a campground whatsoever.
I'm trying to, I would like to try to keep this portion of the hearing on track. Some of these questions to me should come up in the next portion if we think that a site approval is necessary and that the planning board is correct in sending you to us. If you look at our ordinance regarding home uses, home commercial uses, what we do allow, in-home professional offices and certain other uses. And if they are considered a major home occupation, which this surely would be, they would need a site review. So you would need a site review for this. I don't think that the planning board was in error in sending you to us at all.
I think we certainly agree that we need site plan review approval. That's not what we've appealed. We've appealed the planning board's decision that in addition to site plan review approval, we need a variance from the zoning board to allow for those planning board discussions to continue. So if this board was to rule in our favor on this administrative appeal, it would not be getting us out of going back to the planning board for site plan review. We'd going back to the planning board for site plan review approval next week. We're only challenging the planning board's decision that in addition to site plan review approval, we also need a variance from the zoning board to allow for the change of use. We don't think we need a variance to allow for the change of use because we think it is a permitted accessory use to the ongoing gravel operation.
Well, I would like to say that we do have a whole section in our ordinance on non-conforming uses, which the gravel pit is. It is not a commercial zone. It's in a residential zone. It's what we used to call a grandfathered use, now called non-conforming. And our ordinance prohibits the expansion of those grandfathered uses and the change of them. So you would need a variance, I would say, to change the use down there. Calling something an accessory use. It's not like this is a small undertaking, where you're having 10 or 20 people in for a picnic and a wild ride on the lake. This is a big public event. And I really think that the town would benefit from the review of the planning board and that you should ask for a variance. You should come before us for that. That would be my opinion, according to what I've heard here today. I don't think the planning board was in error at all. Does anyone else wish to speak? Terry? Somehow you came to the front of my screen.
I mean, they gave them one event last year, and I don't believe they need a variance. I think, they're going to go for the site plan and with the planning board, and I don't see what the variance is going to accomplish.
Well,
I
Wait.
believe that the variance is needed. I concur with the chairperson that the expansion of the concept of commercial use is very different from that originally intended by the ordinance in terms of home occupation. This is not the same as this is a public event. This is much larger, and this will have a major impact on the entire area. And I think that the planning board was strictly within its duty to request a review by the zoning board.
thank you. And I have to say that while it has 2 or 3 times been mentioned that the select board gave them a permit, they did so in violation of the zoning ordinance, and they know that from what I hear. I haven't asked them directly, but I have scratched my head over why they did it the way they did. I don't know what their reasoning was, because they know it's in violation of the zoning ordinance, and still they allowed it. I think you probably should have started out going to the planning board in the first place.
Madam Chair?
Kevin,
A statement was made that this event could be held once a year without planning board or zoning board, I'll say involvement, for lack of better words. And
who made that statement? You mean here tonight?
I believe so. And I could be mistaken, but I'm just trying to put that statement together with your last statement for a little clarity. That's the only reason why I brought it up.
Well, that is not my understanding. I haven't heard anyone say that, Kevin, either, unless,
I think what I said was that last year, one event was held with a special permit from the Board of Selectmen. So
Correct.
that was one event that was held that did not require planning or zoning approval.
right, so just procedurally, the Board of Selectmen is in charge of enforcing the zoning ordinance. So they knew they were abdicating that responsibility when they gave out that permit, in my opinion. Why they did it, I don't know. I haven't heard a rationale from them. Maybe they thought it would be fun, but I'm quite sure that we've received any number of protests from members of the public and people who live in that area about the noise level. We've received a chart about the decibel level. People are very aware of your proposal, and I don't live in that part of town, but I have heard from any number of people that I'm sure Joanna has a list of people who really want us to look very carefully at this. And I think part of looking carefully at it is to have you go to the planning board for their part in these kinds of requests.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion, given that last year was last year and this year is this year, and the zoning board has a responsibility, I think, to review this. And I would like to move that the decision by the Nottingham Planning Board requiring the applicants to seek a variance in case number 21-007-AA, to seek a variance from Article 2, Section C of the Town of Nottingham zoning ordinance is correct, and an application for variance is required.
I'll second that motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to uphold the planning board decision to require this applicant to request a variance for the use of, for the event that they are planning. All those in favor, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. I'm the chairman. I will vote in favor of the motion. I believe it should be remanded back to the planning board, or at least that their decision should be honored. Aileen, you have to vote in your own motion.
Yes, I approve
Peter?
the motion.
I vote yes.
Teresa,
Nay.
Terry?
Nay.
So that's a 3-2 vote. Is that correct, Joanna? Joanna, can you hear me?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So your application for a reversal of the planning board's decision has been denied. And again, there's a 30-day window in which you or anyone can appeal our decision. Next. Case number 21008-VA, application from Tammy DeFrancesco and James George for a variance from Article 2, Section C of the zoning ordinance to permit watercross events with incidental camping, i.e. commercial use, 3 weekends per year. The property is located at 214 Raymond Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, and is identified as tax map 69, lots 8 and 10. Who will be presenting this for the applicant? Will it be you again, Mr. Allard?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, so please go ahead. We'll observe the same process as before. People can speak for and against.
Okay. Well, I'll skip the introduction on the property information background since I provided that in the last case. To the extent for the record I need to incorporate by reference those comments, I will. And I will dive right into the 5 variance criteria. So first, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. And the Supreme Court has held that because it's in the public interest to uphold the spirit of the ordinance, the courts have held that these 2 criteria are related. And if you meet one test, you almost certainly meet the other. That was the case of Farrar v. Keene. So for purposes of brevity, I will address both criteria together. To be contrary to the public
Excuse me, Mr. Allard, could you hold on a second? I'm having trouble finding my the written 5 criteria, which I'm sure are in my packet. I think I looked through the wrong packet first. Okay, I have them now. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
So to be contrary to the public interest, the variance must unduly conflict with the ordinance such that it violates basic zoning objectives. That was the case of Malachi Glenn Associates. And the court has held that the relevant test is whether granting the variance would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. We do not think it will if this variance is granted. And again, we're now asking for a variance since the administrative appeal was denied. In the last case, we're asking for a variance to allow for the watercross events to be held on the pond within the gravel pit on 3 weekends per year. So we are only talking about 3 weekends per year. We're not proposing any permanent changes to the property. The events are supported by temporary infrastructure. So we're talking about signs, porta potties, some tables for vendors, that type of thing. And then the other 98% of the year, other than the 9 days a year when these events are held, the property remains just as it is today, which, as I've mentioned, is the ongoing active gravel pit operation. So due to the limited and periodic nature of the events, we don't believe it will alter the essential character of the area. Nor will granting the variances threaten the public health or safety. There is an inherent level of noise associated with these races. The chair has already indicated that she's received some comments. We've received the same type of comments from a few individuals at the planning board. But while there is an inherent level of noise associated with these races, again, we're proposing for these events to occur only 3 weekends a year on an existing active gravel operation, which itself has an inherent level of noise dating back to the 70s. And that's an inherent level of noise that occurs on a much more regular basis when there's an excavation going on there day in and day out. So we don't think some noise 3 weekends a year genuinely would threaten public health or safety in connection with the events. And the applicant does arrange for and intends to arrange for a police and paramedic detail on site, and that will be there to protect public health and safety during these events. So therefore, granting the variances would not be contrary to the public interest, and we believe the spirit of the ordinance is observed. And again, I know I touched on it on the extent of the administrative appeal, but this is kind of a commercial type operation going on this site already. We're proposing a different, but also a commercial type operation, not a business per se. It's more recreational events. But again, there are instances under the ordinance where those types of things can be allowed, whether by right or by variance. And so we don't think that this proposal is drastically outlandish to the spirit of the ordinance. We think the spirit of the ordinance is observed. 3, substantial justice is done. As this board knows, this is the balancing test, and the Supreme Court has held that perhaps the only guiding rule is that any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice, and that was the Harborside case. We don't think there's any public injury here if the variances are granted. We don't think there's any public gain if the variances are denied. And we think that actually granting the variances would benefit the public by providing the residents of Nottingham and elsewhere with a sort of fun and unique recreational event that they can attend with other residents in town. So we think there would only be loss to the applicant if the variances are denied. So in balancing public and private rights, the loss to the applicant if the variances are denied outweighs any harm to the public if the variances are granted. So we think substantial justice would be done by granting these variances. 4, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. Again, we're not proposing any permanent changes to the property. We're not seeking to build within any setbacks or build any permanent structures any closer to any abutters than is otherwise allowed under the zoning ordinance, such that the values of their property would be potentially compromised. This is a large lot, as I said, over 66 acres or so, 63 acres or so, excuse me. And it's a large property that can support these types of events on a couple weekends a year. And then after they conclude, the events conclude, the nature of the property reverts right back to how it is today for the remaining 98% of the year. Again, it's an active gravel pit. It's got an inherent level of noise already associated with it. And so for those reasons, we don't think the values of surrounding properties would be diminished if the variances were granted. 5, unnecessary hardship. As this board knows, the first step in the unnecessary hardship analysis is to analyze the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. And this property does have several special conditions. Again, not to repeat myself, but it's the key feature here. It's an active gravel pit with a man-made pond in it. And as far as I know, there's no other property in this area that has that type of unique feature. It's much larger than other properties in the area. For example, the applicant's property, if you combine the 2 lots, 8 and 10, it's 88 acres, whereas abutting properties are only 1.7 acres, that's lot 7-1, 6.81 acres, that's lot 7-2, 4.6 acres, lot 7-3, 5 acres for lot 11, 41 acres for lot 4, 5.02 acres for lot 4-1, 41 acres for lot 4, 34 acres for lot 2, and 10 acres for lot 6. Those are the abutting lot sizes. So even at 41 acres, the largest of the abutting lots, if you look at these 2 combined lots in total, they are larger than even the largest, twice as large as even the largest abutting lots. So this property is much larger than other properties in the area. So owing to these special conditions, there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the zoning ordinance's prohibition against these types of watercross events with incidental camping for the participants, as we suggested, and the application of that prohibition here. Unlike the other properties in the area, the applicant's property is large enough to be able to support these events. And unlike the other properties in the area, the applicant's property contains a gravel pit with a man-made pond that's particularly conducive to facilitating these types of events and is in fact necessary for these types of events. The active gravel pit's a pre-existing commercial-like use, as I have indicated. And again, while there's an inherent level of noise with these races, there's also an inherent level of noise with the active gravel pit going back to the 1970s. So really owing to these special conditions, the applicant's property is uniquely situated in a manner that it can fully and adequately accommodate these events where most other properties could not. really this type of event wouldn't be possible on any other property in the area. But they are possible on the applicant's property, yet a variance is required to allow them. So that's really the heart of the hardship here. Maybe there's no hardship if someone was asking to dig out their residential property in the middle of a neighborhood and pump a bunch of water in and put a pond there and host these events. But these features have existed on this property for a long time. And this is really, we think, a creative and adaptive use of the property's resources to bring something fun and unique to the town of Nottingham. So for those reasons, the applicant, again, only requests to host these events on 3 weekends a year. We think literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. And really for all the reasons that I have stated, we propose that the proposed use is reasonable. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions about our analysis on the 5 variance criteria.
Madam Chair, Kevin here.
Sorry, I was muted. Go ahead, Kevin.
This is more of a statement and a clarification, but just to mitigate and put it on the public record. The gravel pit use and the water crossing use will not be done concurrently. And as a question and confirmation that the gravel pit use will be terminated during the 9 days of the water crossing events. So in the sense of public safety, there will not be dump trucks and excavators and bucket loaders running around during the event.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I have to, once again, speak out in favor of the public interest. And as you have heard, we've had so many complaints from the people in that neighborhood that it is obviously against the public interest to have this water cross tractor, even 1 day a year. And yes, it is a change of use. And yes, it is taken away from their quiet enjoyment of their homes that they have a right to. That's a very loud activity, and those people 3 weekends a year, they're losing the quiet enjoyment of their homes. How much is that worth? And it's definitely going to hurt their property values. Try to sell your house on one of those days that you're having your event. I mean, how much will that cost? Hurt their property values? So yeah, I think it isn't in the public interest, and that's the most important question here. And the other comment is I don't see this as a hardship. I mean, that property's already existed as, residential and a gravel pit. So there's nothing that's creating a hardship except for your desire to change the use. And I don't think that in itself is a hardship. I mean, you have to observe our ordinances. If you want to have a place to race, there's a nice track in Epping. But once again, I don't think that's an appropriate location for that type of event. It's a residential, quiet neighborhood. And those people have a right to have that peace and quiet.
Thank you, Peter. I'm hoping that when we get into deliberating after the public hearing, that we discuss the 5 criteria again. Do any other members of the board wish to question or comment?
I have a question.
Terry?
Yeah, the event, it says 9 days, but do you run the event just one of the days, or do you run it all 3 days, or the crossing?
Tammy, would you like to respond to that?
I think she didn't hear you. Tammy,
What was that?
could you answer Peter's?
No,
Terry's
I didn't hear one thing for some reason. I got logged off on this computer. I was trying to get back on my laptop, so I didn't hear one thing. So can you please repeat that?
I just said
Terry's-
it says the event is it's going to be a 3-day event, but do you run the water crossing all 3 days, or just?
No, it's
one
really
day?
only a 2-day event. So it
Right.
only happens from 10 in the morning till 6 p.m. at night on Saturday and Sunday. The Friday is merely just to give the racers time to adjust their snowmobiles to whatever they have to adjust to for the water. So they give them 2 hours to get in and try to do some practice. So the event's really only 2 days. It's Saturday and Sunday. And Friday is just 2 hours worth of practice from 2 to 4 p.m. And hopefully nobody's even home yet at that time to have to worry about the noise.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just clarify? You mentioned just a few minutes ago that the public hearing, there will be opportunity after the public hearing for
With the
members of the
discuss,
board
yes.
to
And as-
engage in further discussion.
Yes,
Then I will withhold my question until after the public hearing.
okay, thank you.
I had,
Anybody,
I had one comment.
Terry? Go ahead, Terry.
Well, Joanna sent us some comments from the public, but I only saw 2, right? Is that how many Joanna sent us?
Maybe when we get into opening it up to public comment and questions, she could bring some of those up and maybe put them on the screen or whatever.
Right, but Peter, made it sound like there were, it was hundreds of.
I think there've been more than 2.
I mean, there were 2. There was one lady from Derry who goes to Pawtucket State Park, and there was another guy up the road. But other than that, that was all I saw. So,
Thank you.
Joanna, can you address that in terms of, because there were more than 2?
Yes, there were more than 2, and I can definitely pull them up if necessary. They are available on the website.
Thank you.
Bonnie, I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Teresa.
I just want to say that my husband and I love kayaking out on Pawtucket, and we were out there last year while this event was going on. You could hear some of the noise, but it did not affect our enjoyment of kayaking on the lake whatsoever. I know that some people are saying that who are on Pawtucket that it was awful, but certainly something that ends by 6 p.m. we should not entirely ruin your weekend. And if we could be out there on our anniversary, which we get to do like once a year, go out for our anniversary on the lake and enjoy the morning and the early afternoon and not be affected, then I don't think any of the other folks should find a real hardship either.
Anyone else?
How many miles away were you?
And did you
How'd
have
you
a
like to live
baby?
next door?
Peter, I was on Pawtucket.
Are there people on the, and Madam Chair, you may know this, but looking at the number of people on, are there people who are speaking there, or are we only, do we only have letters?
No, we don't know that yet. We don't know that.
Okay, thank you.
I
That's.
haven't opened it up to the public yet, but I'm about to do that unless
Okay,
other members of
thank
the
you.
board, giving the board a chance to ask questions first. If there are no further questions or comments from board members, I will open it up to the public. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this event from the public?
Can I just ask one question before we open up to the public? Will the applicant have the ability for comment after the public finishes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, before the board goes into deliberations, you will have the question, you will have the last say. How's that?
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman with his hand up, sir. Please state your name and your address, whoever speaks, just like at town meeting.
Lee Weldy, 110 Nottingham Road, Raymond.
Thank
Can you
you.
hear me?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
Okay, I live 800 feet from the event in Raymond. I've attended the event and we can hear the noise. I can also hear the noise at Pawtucket. We hear the fireworks go off at night all through the summertime at the lake. So my quality of life, I live up on top of the hill. I actually above the tree line, my windows for my bedroom. I've been in town, Raymond, since 1977. What goes on at that pit for that short period of time has not affected, as people are talking about the quality of life and the quality of the way things go on, has not affected anything that I've decided to do, whether it's cook out on my deck, have people over or anything else. If you want to associate it with anything, it almost sounds like a bee buzzing sometimes, and it's not never ending. I can hear the dragway from my house. I can hear the Lee Speedway from my house, and I can hear Star Speedway from my house. And none of those events are any more annoying or concerning to me than what goes on at the pit. I'm in favor of it. I hear the bike rides that go by our house, 250, 300 motorcycles that go by. It's not something that is uncontrollable. They started at a decent time, so it's not like my neighbors starting a lawnmower up at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're very respectful of the start times and the end times. Normally when we're eating dinner, there's no noise. So, I mean, it's not like it starts at 6 in the morning and goes until, after dark. They're very respectful of their neighbors as far as the noise goes. And I'm strongly in favor of the event. I enjoy going down there, and we're not there all the time, but when I go home, it's not anything that bothers us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor?
They will, I hope.
Does anyone else have their hand raised? Okay, anyone wish to speak in opposition? Arthur Jenks,
Yep.
could you state your name and address? I mean, so that we know you are Arthur Jenks, even though your phone says you are.
Yeah, Arthur Jenks, 214R Raymond Road,
Okay,
I am-
and Nottingham or Raymond, please.
Nottingham.
Thank you.
Yep. I am the direct abutter behind Tammy and Jimmy.
Mhm.
I drive through the event when it happened last year to get in and out. That's my right of way goes through the middle of their property. I have no problems with it. I mean, it didn't affect my weekends. It didn't affect my enjoyment of my weekends. It was just a bunch of people getting together to have a great weekend. I don't see the issue. And as Lee Weldy said, there's just as much noise coming off Pawtuckaway Lake in the summer every weekend, not just for 3. So I don't see much of a difference. They're letting off fireworks at 2 a.m. I don't, that wakes up dogs and everything else around the neighborhood. So I'm in complete favor of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
How do I raise my
Jennifer-
hand?
Jennifer's iPhone, I can see somehow you came on my screen. Don't ask me about the magic of technology. I don't understand it, but you may have the floor, Jennifer, but please identify yourself because it just says Jennifer's iPhone.
Okay. Yeah, it's Jennifer Menard. I live at 166 Raymond Road. I wanted to voice that I am in favor of the watercross. I've been here since '96, and I live across the street from one of the inlets at Seaman Point Road. I mean, it's a part of lake life noise. So if it's just the noise that's the issue, I'm sorry, but it shouldn't be an issue. I've been to the watercrosses. My family has enjoyed it. We go as a family. I have my older children, my 20-year-old, my 22-year-old, my 18-year-old, and his friends. We go, we enjoy it as a family. It's something different, something fun to watch. And during COVID, it was a breath of fresh air because we got to go out. They were very strict with the mask. I will say that. They kept us, they said, do not take your mask off. Please keep your distance. They had it partitioned off, so everybody was safe. And I understand people live around it, but if they can put up with the campgrounds and the sirens from the police going over there, the ambulance going over there, and the constant summer lights going in and out of the outlets coming onto 156, I don't see what the issue with the watercrosses are. And that, my family, we enjoy them.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Anyone else wish to speak to this application?
Hi, my name is Grace Lapointe and I live at 212 Raymond Road. And I live in the condominium.
Could you
Excuse me?
Please state your town because you're right near the
Oh, I'm
Raymond.
sure. In Nottingham.
Thank
So
you.
I live in the condominiums directly in front of the gravel pit and the watercross. And we are against the events. And I will tell you, there's been talk about one event last year. There actually were 3 events last year. And I would like to just give a little history of it. I know I said this at the planning board, but the way that we were told about it, we didn't have the chance to go to any of these meetings prior to the first event. We received tickets on our door the day of the first practice. And, you know, the comment that the practice lasts for 2 hours is absolutely incorrect on Friday. It goes for a longer period of time on Friday. Anyway, we received free tickets the practice day of the first event. We never had a chance to speak out at all. So for those 3 events, the noise level is incredible. People, as the chairwoman has said, decibel meters were taken, and in the planning board meetings, there have been comparisons to trucks driving by or motorcycles driving by. And yes, they're loud when they drive by, but it's a few minutes. For the watercross events, they go on all day Saturday and all day Sunday. Usually the other events were in the warm weather, so you had to have your windows shut, your air conditioning, because the noise is just so loud. Again, there have been a lot of comments. Attorney Brett kept saying that there is inherent noise with the gravel pit. And absolutely, there is noise with the gravel pit. My daughter has owned this condominium for 9 years. I've been living here with her for 4 years. And there is that day-to-day of the gravel pit, but there is absolutely no comparison to the noise of the watercross event. My daughter actually did a video. She sent it to the planning board and has sent it to other people comparing the watercross, the actual event, and the gravel pit during a normal day of the gravel pit. And as I said, there is absolutely no comparison whatsoever. So we are very much against this event taking place, because for us, there is heartache. It affects us for 3 weekends during the year. And as Peter White said, you know, we have a right to our, quiet during those weekends. So we're very much against it.
And would you say you talked about the noise level being not comparable, but you didn't say which was worse. Are you saying that the watercross event is much?
The watercross is so much worse. Like I said, and you know what, my daughter's sitting here next to me, and she is saying she can send the video to the zoning board. I know you're going to be talking afterwards, but it's an actual comparison of the actual events.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this application?
I would like to. I live on Indian Run on Pawtucket Way. And last year,
Nottingham and
Nottingham.
And your name, please.
Mary Colvard.
Thank you, Mary.
And last year, we didn't know that this event was taking place, but we weren't able to sit out on our deck and have a conversation because the loud noise carries across the open water. And it was just like overwhelmingly unbearable. And it went on and on beyond the hours that they listed, because I guess there was like some rain. And so they had more like drawn out hours. And another concern that I have, because I'm an environmentalist, is that this pit, this pond of water is on an aquifer. And these machines are notorious for spilling petroleum. And if this petroleum gets into the aquifer, it ruins the whole area. And how can you say that an event that's going to draw hundreds of people is inherently the same as an event such as a gravel pit? They're not even comparable. So I just don't even see where they have a valid argument that this is not a major change in use of that piece of property. And I also find it very insulting that they say, well, they have a unique piece of property with this pond and all these smaller acreages. Well, they couldn't possibly hold this event because they're smaller than this wonderful acreage with the pond. I find that like a very insulting comment. Sorry.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Good evening. This is Mike St. Laurent. Am I on?
You are, Mike?
Yes, I'm from,
Could you state your address, please, sir?
sure, 12 Indian Run, Mike St. Laurent.
And that's in Nottingham?
And that's in Nottingham, New Hampshire. I'm going to speak on a number of issues. The first one is the diminished value. If you look at our zoning, it's very clear. It says no diminution in value of surrounding properties would occur. Granting a variance would change, it would diminish the value of many camps on the lake. Currently, I counted almost 100 camps on the lake within less than a mile from this property. An average value of the lake of $400,000 to $600,000, just take an average of $500,000, brings $50 million in property value and $1 million in taxes, as well as the properties along the other adjacent roads. We're basically talking about $1.2 million in property taxes that are paid every year by people that would like to enjoy the peace and quiet of their property. I would suspect that anyone that visited my property during one of these events, if they wanted to buy my property, would just turn around and go home. If they wanted to buy the property, they would probably want to bid 20% lower than the appraised value. The problem here is that they're saying that the residential area or the neighborhood is just those homes that they view on the road. That's totally untrue. You've heard from a few people that the noise affects people out on the lake, and that's absolutely true. You go out and the noise is the worst kind you can hear because it's intermittent. So you sit there and it's quiet and you're resting, and then suddenly it's on and on and on, and then it stops and you relax, and then it does it again and again. This is a problem. This causes angina in people and also causes a lot of stress and tension, and I would never ever invite anybody to my camp on these weekends whatsoever, and we would have to plan doing other things. It would definitely disrupt our lifestyle. So the issue here is very clear. There is a diminution in value. The problem is that they suspect that they say that the berm blocks the noise, and that just isn't true. They also say that it's only 3 weekends of the year. So let's look at the 3 weekends of the year. Right now, there are no rules whatsoever to say how large this event can become. So I looked into it, and it turns out there's an event called the Epping Fremont event that gets 2,000 people that lasts for a weekend. How are we to say that this event doesn't grow to 2,000 people? How are we to say that they're not going to hold the event on Memorial Day when everybody goes to their camp? And then they have another one in June, and then they have another one on Labor Day. Or they say, who's going to enforce that? Who's going to measure the noise? Now, they also really make an argument. There's no argument made whatsoever about this being on an aquifer. So if you have to understand, there's 100 snow machines that are going. These are snow machines that pollute because they're 2-stroke engines. You can ask the operator of the event, he'll confirm they're all 2-stroke engines. Well, basically a 2-stroke engine, if it's modified and it's running perfectly, burns 86% possibly of the gas and the oil, and the other 14% goes out. If it's not modified, stock, then 30% of the gas and the oil goes out. So let's do a little math together. 100 racers, and on average, the person that runs this event say they go between 2 and 3 gallons of gas, so 250 gallons of gas. Every weekend that they do this, about 20% of that gas and the oil goes into the soil and the water. Some of it evaporates, but let's take an example of what happens to our water table. 1 gallon of gas will pollute 750,000 gallons of water. We have an aquifer that feeds the water through a protected river that's 75 feet away that feeds the town of Durham and the University of New Hampshire, which pulls a ton of water, millions of gallons of water from the Lamprey River watershed. So if we approve this year after year, event after event, there's going to be oil and gas spilled, oil and gas, some of it evaporated, some of it is going to go directly into the soil. And basically, how do we know, how do these abutters know that after 10 years, their well fails? They don't have any water. They go in and say, who are we going to sue? Well, you try to sue somebody, but it doesn't work. So you drill for another well, and then that well fails as well. What's going to happen then? What is the town going to feel like when you have several abutters that have failed wells where their property is basically useless? This has to be looked at from a long-term, strategic, and economical issue. The second problem that no one talks about is the air pollution caused by these snow machines. Basically, with the 2008 EPA regulations on the snow machines, 1 hour of a snow machine produces an hour and 50 hours of pollution. So basically, you have hundreds of people standing around breathing what's the equivalent of standing next to a 12-lane highway, standing there for hours, breathing in all this exhaust and the smog. So if you take the numbers and you add them together, basically you have a few 100,000 hours worth of smog and pollution and gas spilled on the water. But wait, there's more. If you have a child that goes there and there's nothing there that tells people, say, hey, you better show up and you better have really good earplugs for your kids. There's enough high noise there that Karl Munn brought out to say you're going to cause permanent damage to young people. There's no protection whatsoever. People show up, they have young kids. The kids say, Dad, that's noisy. They get home, their ears are ringing. A month later, they find out that kid has something wrong with their hearing. So what things affect the general population? Do we have a master plan? We have a master plan. It's supposed to protect the general welfare of our people. That includes our rivers. That includes our air. That includes our property values. There's a lot of things that are wrong with this. Every time I look at an ordinance here, and I went through all of them, you saw what I wrote up for this. I went through every ordinance, and it just looks like, oh, you're not supposed to make any noise past your boundary, period. You're not supposed to make any changes. This is a non-conforming business on a non-conforming lot. You're not allowed to make any changes. They talk about accessory use. You can't make any changes to this use. There's no changes allowed by the zoning. If we allow this, it'll be a mockery of the zoning. Anybody will say, well, we have yard sales in town. Therefore, I can have an event for 3 days. So let's figure out what other things people can do in town without any zoning variances. So you could have someone that says, I like dogs. I like having dog sled races. I have a place on my property, and I'm going to have 3 weekends in the wintertime where I get 700 people, 1,500 people over the weekend, and we're going to have dogs that stay overnight, and I'm going to have all these dogs yapping all day and pooping all over the place. All right. And how about another person that decides they like those drones that fly in the air? I'm going to have 3 weekends that have drones that are flying in the air, and everybody's going to have all their privacy invaded because these drones can go anywhere. And you're going to have people that just decide we can do whatever we like.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, could we please stick to the issue at hand and not go off on tangents? Please. There's a lot of people that are here and want to talk, and I don't think we need to be hearing about things that are out in the clouds somewhere. Stick to the issue of the variance, please.
Okay, well, let me finish up with substantial justice. Will be done then.
Go ahead, Mr. St. Laurent.
Okay. I'm sorry I get carried away in this. Significant harm will come to the general public, most specifically the abutters of Raymond Road and the lakefront properties. Property values will be reduced. There'll be a nuisance for 3 weekends during the most important vacation months. There'll be reduced usage of the property by lakefront owners. There'll be potential pollution to groundwater and a reduced tax revenue to the town. The benefit to the town and the benefit to the community is minimal. They will earn some extra money, and basically they have the cost of the community far outweighs the benefits to this one property owner. The incidental benefits to the community are very small. There's very little economic benefit whatsoever. All of the lodging money and all of the restaurant money goes to Raymond. It doesn't go to Nottingham also. There are many other racing events within an easy drive of Nottingham, and the ability to see racing events is still an option for anyone in town to pursue with only a minor inconvenience. This will become a major inconvenience to the property owners that abut it, and a major inconvenience to the lakefront property owners. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Bonnie,
Teresa.
could we please hear only new information going forward, not a repetition?
Teresa, I'm the chairman. I will let speak who speaks.
I was simply asking a question. It was, could we?
I haven't shut anyone up yet, particularly. He did go off a little bit on the dogs. However, he was making a certain point about what can happen. Although he should be reminded that we don't set precedent here. So because we do this doesn't necessarily mean that would happen. Now, are there other members of the public who wish to speak? Anybody else? You will be allowed to speak if you wish. I don't hear anyone coming forward. So I'm going to turn the floor back to Mr. Allard for a final rebuttal. Sir, are you ready for that?
Yes, thank you very much. There was a lot of points made, and I just wanted to respond to a few of them very briefly. One concerning petroleum and the aquifer and pollutants. You know, this is really no different than someone who has a boat out on the lake. Even Massabesic and Canopy Lake allow boats, and those are drinking reservoirs. This really is no different than that. We certainly I didn't mean to offend anyone in terms of the acreage and the pond. I was just making a point that the reality is if you want to host one of these events, you got to have a big property and you got to have a body of water. That's the only point that I was trying to make. In terms of, you know, this could be a slippery slope where they start hosting the events on Memorial Day and Labor Day and 4th of July. If this board was going to grant a variance, it could condition its approval that the events don't occur on those holidays. And in terms of use on a grandfathered lot, if the board grants a variance, then obviously the grandfathering issue with respect to the gravel pit is not relevant because the board would be permitting the watercross events with the variance. It sort of takes the grandfathered status of the gravel pit out of play. But there have been a lot of points made by the various abutters, and various residents, both for and against this project. And I think based on what we've heard tonight so far, the applicant would like to request a continuance to next month in order to really take a closer look at some of this stuff, take a closer look at the sound, take a closer look at the property value issues, and take a closer look at some of the pollution assertions that have been made tonight, and potentially supplement our application or come back next month with some additional materials that we think would help the board have some of their concerns eased with some of these issues that have been raised. So we think that would be in everyone's best interest to continue this to next month, regroup, and go from there.
I think that actually I'm kind of surprised that you didn't have data about property values and pollution tonight, but I think that's probably a good tactic to gather some more information, and perhaps we as a board might seek some legal advice in the interim as well.
Madam Chair.
This is a complicated case. Yes, Raylene.
One issue that has not yet been addressed, or at least I've missed it, and that's the issue of traffic. I mean, this is on a 2-lane road. that already has a significant amount of traffic on it. The traffic for this weekends, the campers alone, the people who will be attending, I would think would make a major impact on the highway for both the residents who live there, as well as those who are trying to get from Nottingham to Raymond to 101 and down that way. And this is, yes.
I think, and Dirk Grotenhouse is here. He's the chairman of the planning board. I guess he's observing our activities tonight, but I believe that they would still need a site review, even if they were granted a variance. And I believe that is the province of the planning board. But correct me if I'm wrong. Dirk, is that correct? You would? I'm just asking you for your expertise. They would have to get site plan approval from the board, and you would address the issues of safety and traffic and all of that. I don't think it would.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you hear him, Raylene?
Yes, I did. But I think that is a major concern, and the impact that will have on the area and on the residents, and increased risk for the community. The other thing was, I understand, I hear the argument for the unnecessary hardship. I would like to hear, I don't really see that there is an unnecessary hardship if the property is there, the property is doing what it is doing with the gravel pit. The fact that this is not allowed does not add any additional hardship to the property or to the owner.
So I would like to restate that I think what I would like to hear from the board now is whether or not the board agrees to allow a continuance. That would be 30 days, I would presume. Joanna, can you speak to that? 30 days from now?
If that's what they want, but they can request a date, time certain, and the board has to agree to that.
Yeah, we would request that the meeting be continued to a date certain. So whatever the date of the June meeting is, that would be the date we request. And for the record, we do agree, Madam Chair, with your analysis that if the variance is granted, we do still need site plan review approval, and traffic is primarily within the purview of the planning board on site plan review approval.
So, so the June meeting time is okay with them? And
June 15th.
Yeah, and because I have an election between now and then, I'm glad it's not in between. I also have potatoes and tomatoes to plant.
I wanted to make one just on some of the public input.
Go ahead, Terry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to just address the I guess it was Mr. St. Laurent on Indian Run. I mean, there's, according to his analysis, I mean, in Pawtuckaway, there's thousands and thousands of snowmobiles on that lake all winter long, making noise. Motorboats, I go over to Pawtuckaway, the motorboats, they're super loud. I mean, they're loud. I don't know how you could hear this event if you were up Pawtuckaway with a motorboat. So that was all I have to say.
Thank you.
Now, if I could just.
If there's no further comment.
Oh.
Peter.
Well, living on Pawtuckaway, yeah, we don't have thousands of motorboats or snowmobiles here. We got a couple dozen in the summer, a couple dozen snowmobiles in the winter. But one of our issues as far as our noise ordinance is that any loud noise, I believe it's 30 minutes is the maximum our town allows, and then it becomes a nuisance. So once again, when you're talking this motocross from 10 in the morning to 6 at night, incredibly loud noise. And once again, that's a little bit different than a snowmobile going across the lake or a truck going up a road. It's it's a public nuisance, and I don't think the neighbors want to live with that.
I would like to entertain a motion for continuance. Could someone come
Yeah,
up with that? If not,
I make a motion for a continuance if they'd like one.
till our next
I'll
June.
second it.
Thank you. So a motion has been made and seconded to continue this meeting to our June meeting date, which is, can you tell me the date, Joanna? June 15th or something like that?
June 15th.
Is it the 15th?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll continue it, and All those in favor, say aye. I say aye.
Aye.
Terry? Raylene? Or Peter? You've appeared on the screen. Yes? I can't hear you. Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Raylene?
Aye.
Teresa?
Aye.
No.
Thank you. So this hearing is hereby continued to June 15th.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next, Joanna, do we have minutes or other business coming before the board tonight?
Yes, I have minutes for March 16th.
I will abstain and say good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Peter.
I move that we approve the minutes of March
16th.
16th as written and amended.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye. I'll say aye. Terry?
Aye.
Raylene?
Aye.
Teresa?
Aye, and Kevin also had told Joanna that he approved the minutes. You might want to speak with him if he's still on.
Aye.
Well, I have to seat him first. He wasn't seated at this meeting. But anyway, Kevin says aye too. Count his
Aye.
vote or not. We haven't, they're approved as voted on. And I hereby seat Kevin for that vote. You were here anyway for that one. Okay, do we have any further business, Joanna?
No. We
I
do
will
not.
now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll
So
make a motion.
moved.
Yeah.
Whoa. Terry's made a motion to adjourn. Who seconded it? Did someone second?
Kevin here?
I seconded it.
Teresa seconded. All those in favor say aye. Kevin? How do you
Madam
vote?
Chair?
Pardon?
Madam
We're
Chair?
voting to adjourn. I can't hear you.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Can you?
Before I say that, you mentioned some counsel for the next meeting.
Yes. Yes.
And-
It'll probably be written counsel, but I'm going to talk to the town administrator first. And then I'll have Joanna contact you all about how we do it. Unless we can have an in-person meeting.
Okay, understood. Thank you for clarification, and I will agree to end this meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Talk soon.
Anyone else haven't voted? Raylene, do you vote to?
Aye.
And Terry and Teresa, did you guys vote? Yes.
Aye.
Okay.
And Teresa, aye, and I vote aye. So the meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night.